Good afternoon. Thank you for joining us for a special webinar on Best Teleworking Practices, the Road to Success for Employees. This is the third in a series of 4 webinars on teleworking during COVID-19. If you missed the first 2 webinars, you can view them on our website, ctrides.com, via the Telework section. My name is Russell McDermott, and I'm the Program Director for CT Rides. I'm joined by Elham Shirazi, who is the Principal of e-Planning and one of the telework specialists we work with on the CT Rides program. Before we get started, I want to go over a few housekeeping rules. All participants will be muted for the webinar. If you have any questions, please type them in the Q&A tab and we'll answer them during the Q&A section at the end. I want to emphasize, no matter how small your question may be, we encourage you to ask it. We're all facing the same challenges, so odds are we all have similar questions. So as they come in, type them in and we'll get to it at the end of the webinar. We're going to have a copy of this and all of our webinars available on our website, ctrides.com. And lastly, your feedback is extremely valuable to us, so we would greatly appreciate it if you took the time to let us know how we did. You'll receive a copy of this survey both in your browser at the end of the webinar and via email. Just a little bit about us at CT Rides. We're a program of the Connecticut Department of Transportation, and we offer services that help commuters find better commutes than driving alone to work. This helps to reduce traffic congestion and improves air quality, which in turn makes the state a better place to live and work. One of the services that we've been providing since the mid-90s is our free consultations to companies and their employees to develop and formalize remote work programs with an emphasis on best practices, which is what we plan on covering today. We find ourselves in an unprecedented situation where many of us were suddenly transitioned to a full-time remote work position. We're all having to adjust to not only a new work routine, but a new life routine, where there's so much uncertainty in regards to the duration of when this will end, or really what things will look like after we get to the other side of this. We know many of you and your organizations are still trying to figure out how best to adjust to this new normal. And frankly, I think it's important to understand and acknowledge that we're all playing catch up and figuring out how best to deal with things that we've never experienced before, such as working at home with child and family commitments that we didn't plan for. Many of us, in addition to your regular jobs, are also working as part-time teachers for your kids. And we hope that you can use some of these best practices with some of their remote learning. My main message here is to acknowledge some of those challenges and understand that A, it's okay, B, we're in this together, and C, there are things that we can do to better position ourselves for success in this new reality. So we just discussed some of the challenges we all face, but it's equally, if not more so important to remember that not only are these challenges not insurmountable, but this situation also creates a number of opportunities for us. We now have the opportunity to work more independently on a much broader scale. We can develop new or hone existing skill sets that's going to be so critical during these times, like our communication and organization and planning skills. And we can find out if remote working arrangements is something that works for us and our employer. We're all very much in a pilot program right now. And when we get to the other side of this, if your employer decides to keep their remote work capabilities, is this something that you as an employee would want to continue with? Lastly, I think this situation allows all of us, employees, and for those managers and team leaders on the call, to re-examine how we gauge productivity by focusing on deliverables and tasks over proximity. In today's webinar, as the name suggests, we're going to be taking a deeper dive on some of the adjustments we're all having to make, discuss the importance of things like communications and organization, and go through some practical best practices that we can all easily deploy to better position ourselves for success. Now I'd like to introduce my colleague, Elham Shirazi, who is one of the foremost experts in teleworking and has worked with organizations of all sizes across the globe to develop and deploy remote work programs. Elham?
Thank you so much, Russell, for that introduction. Good afternoon, everyone. We're very glad that you make the time to be with us for this webinar because we're hoping to offer you some tools and tips so that you can deal with teleworking in a more meaningful experience as somebody who maybe has never done this before, or maybe someone who did this in the past, but perhaps did not do it every day. So what are some adjustments that you're going to have to make? First and foremost, this is a whole new setting for everybody, so you're not alone. However, there is going to be some level of physical isolation from your coworkers and from your managers, and we're going to hopefully try to bridge that gap by ensuring that we use virtual communications as a solution. One of the biggest questions that employees have who have not been managed in a remote work type of a setting before, or actually, I should say a lot of managers also have this question: how do I know if they're working when I don't see them? And a very quick answer to that, I'm sure you know it, and the truth is, how do they know we're working when they see us? Which really the two do not give you any concept of what is the productivity that is going on. What will the impact on teamwork be? A lot of organizations, a lot of employees are worried about, okay, now I can't have all these meetings and I can't discuss some of the topics with my coworkers. Again, don't worry, we're going to talk about teamwork. And in fact, maybe this is a good time to rethink the whole concept of, do we meet too many times when we are in the office? We're also going to talk about developing some new organizational skills, so your days are going to get started in a very planned manner. And we're also going to give you some tips for dealing with distractions in the home environment, which, as Russell mentioned, I mean, many of us are probably being teachers at home right now and dealing with a lot of other distractions that normally we don't have. What we've learned is that teleworking has a really good impact on employees. And if they already don't have these top skills, that they actually develop them through the course of working at home, especially given COVID-19 and the uncertainty in terms of how long it's going to last. It's important to keep in mind that this is the skill set that will make you successful. So everything from managing your time better, to your communication skills, to having the motivation to start early in the day and end at a certain point, and to become more independent in getting your work done and taking initiatives. And also, we're going to help you think about how to organize your workspace at home while you're meeting a lot of goals and objectives, and hopefully becoming technically competent. Some top of the line tips that help a lot of teleworkers. One of them is, we're used to rituals. We would wake up in the morning, take a shower, get dressed, get in the car, drive to work, have a cup of coffee, and then get started. In the absence of all those rituals, you've got to create something for yourself which says, okay, this is when my workday begins. Now, it might be that in this era, you're sharing childcare duties with your partner. So it might be that in the morning, right away, that, okay, after I've, taken that shower and put some comfortable clothes on, again, I would suggest changing out of your pajamas, only because it'll get you more motivated to work, but you don't have to get dressed up. To have something which says, here's when my workday starts. So it might be at a certain hour, it might be after you take your dog for a walk, but make sure that it's a ritual you can maintain. We highly suggest that in the absence of being able to take breaks, and many of you may not even take breaks, you weren't taking breaks when you were working in the office. You really need to do this when you are at home, because sitting for hours without any movement, and hopefully with a lot less distractions, it can give you bad posture. So it's really important to have a mid-morning break. And some organizations have substituted that with a virtual coffee where, everybody takes a break around a certain time and they get their coffee and just sit around for, 10, 15 minutes and talk about their personal lives. So if that's something that will help break the monotony, but force you to, and you can stand when you're, by the way, doing that virtual break, it might help, just so that you don't feel lonely and isolated. But definitely also take breaks to move around, and, if possible, take a quick walk, because that also helps break the day. I have teleworked for over 30 years, and I want to tell you, I always break for lunch, and I always eat lunch away from my desk, and actually, take some pleasure in making something, if it's a healthy salad or, a healthy sandwich. I take pleasure in preparing that lunch for myself, and I definitely get away from my desk. So I highly, highly suggest doing that. In this era of COVID-19, where we're told to stay at home, but we're allowed to still take walks, I think it's really it's going to be important to do that. We don't want you to stay at your desk and just work and work and work and not take breaks and not go for walks. In fact, your workday should have an ending, and because sometimes teleworkers tend to overwork. If you're interested, if it gives you peace of mind, meditate. A lot of people have started doing this. Luckily, there are a lot of apps that make that possible. And I would say when you're working, stay away from the news, stay away from the radio, because it can really distract you and it might depress you. So use work as a safe place to go to. We do recommend that you pick an area in your home to have a dedicated workspace. Now, I know that that might be hard, given that you weren't given any advance notice and you have the surface space that you have. We'll talk about ergonomics a little bit further down the line, but we highly, highly recommend that you decide that this is the place in my house every day that I will be sitting at, working at, and this is where I have my, my laptop. This is where I'll have my whole little office set up so that you can be productive. We did talk about establishing a routine, and that obviously is important, as I mentioned in the previous slide. But also give some thought to how you're organizing your work and schedules, your tasks based on priorities at the workplace. So your day sometimes will allow you for a lot more flexibility in how you organize it. When we're in the office, a lot of times there are these set meetings we have to go to. But at home, you may have a little bit more control over that time to spend it productive. One of the things that we encourage you to do is hopefully your managers are doing some of this with you. But if they are not, it would be good to sit back, and define your objectives and deliverables. Establish some timelines, just start writing them down. Send an email or have a conversation with your manager as to what are some of the goals and deliverables that you are going to be working on, to make sure you're both on the same page, and you're on the same page in terms of the timeliness and what the expectations are. This typically should happen early on in the week. At the end of the week, it's really good to have a review period where very quickly you either send an email that shows what your goals and deliverables were and how they were met, and you quickly just check off or say what you did, what you didn't do, or do a review. Whether it's once a week, whether it's once every 2 weeks, this is a very helpful exercise when you first start teleworking. And then try to improve on, if there were any issues that came up. And for the next week, I would say repeat this process until it becomes a little bit more of a natural process in terms of getting the work done. Hopefully, as I said, your managers are doing this. If not, please, you take the initiative so that you have some discussion of what those expectations are and of meeting them. This is a very simple chart for achieving what I just talked about. You don't have to use this, it's really up to you, but it wouldn't be a bad idea, to identify what your tasks are that you're going to be working on, what are the deliverables going to be, and then at the end of the week, just, jot down 2 lines, accomplished, or, accomplished 40%, 50%, or couldn't finalize one document due to something. It's really up to you, but this is here to help make your lives easier. We want you to maintain contact with your coworkers, and please know that you're no longer, obviously in a situation where you can walk down the, hallway, and confer with a coworker or a colleague. So you want to make sure that whether it's through a text, whether it's through a chat, whether it's through a quick video conference, hopefully some of you are starting to use video conferencing a little bit more in your lives, that you're maintaining that contact. Sometimes it's really helpful to see somebody's face and to see their body language and to see what they're thinking, what they look like when they're thinking about something that you're talking about. Make sure that you are following your company's protocol for the security of information. As we all know, there are hackers out there, and nobody wants their data breached. So I would say just, work along the same lines as your IT people have told you in order to make sure that you keep the integrity of the information. Deadlines are critical. If you're going to miss something, make sure your manager knows, or if you need more time, you can tell them you need more time and, talk about maybe what some of the issues have been. Attend the scheduled meetings by phone or by, video, audio, whatever is possible. And hopefully, as your organizations are getting more robust with video conferencing or managing electronic meetings, you'll see that there are features for raising your hand, there are features for, other features for asking questions and answers, and still for making sure that meetings can be interactive. What about your family and friends? I know this is going to be a hard one, and it's going to be a little difficult to establish, some ground rules around, children, especially when they're smaller, as to, I'm home. Yes, mom, your daddy is home, but I am working. So I know that that's a difficult message during COVID-19, but it's not a bad message to put out there and say, or with, your partners or your roommates, talk about, okay, when are interruptions okay? And, is it that you've switched your schedule with, your husband or your wife, so that you're working in the morning and he or she is taking care, or they are taking care of the kids in the afternoon. And so those ground rules are established. I know that in, the first few weeks, we've probably all seen kids walk in, wherever you're teleworking, or a significant other come in and bring in a sandwich. It's okay. We're getting to know each other's families because this is a different environment. But to the degree which you can keep those minimal, the easier it'll be to get your work done and have, no disruptions. Have some rules for the equipment and any office materials that you've taken home from the office, because you do not want anyone else getting on a company issued laptop in your household. Nobody else should be touching it. That is your organization's property. And, if you've taken home some supplies and anything from, pens and rulers to Post-its, you want to make sure that it's clear these are for me when I'm working, so that other household members are not feeling free to share all of them with you. A few ergonomic guidelines that we want you to have in mind. Definitely try to work at a desk. I know we've seen pictures of people teleworking outside by the pool, or sitting on a couch, or lying down on the floor. It really is ideal for your posture and for, to make sure that you don't get hurt while you're teleworking, to have a proper desk. And different people are comfortable with different heights. Some people have invested in desks that come up so you can stand, and do some of your work. And some of these gizmos are not that expensive. But you have to have a desk that you're comfortable at. Do not try to not work on glass, because glass can break and it can hurt you. So the degree to which you have a durable surface is really very important. And think through, if you have a desk, where are you going to place it in this era where home and work have blended into each other, or where the best place would be to do your work. If it's a kitchen table, obviously you're going to have to make really good rules about that table, and that might be your only table, so that other household members are not there when you're making your calls and your conference meetings, especially the video conference ones. A chair is very important. Try to find the most comfortable chair in your house, and ideally, this would be something with an adjustable seat for both height and the angle to provide support. A chair on rollers is, really preferable if possible. And we want to make sure that you don't get hurt in the chair that you're working in. Lighting should be directed towards the side or behind the line of vision. By the way, if you're using a laptop, please don't crunch over to see your screen. Try to bring your laptop up by either placing some, some books under it. They don't make those telephone books anymore, but some heavy-duty books, so you can bring it up so you're reading what you're doing at an eye level. Try to invest in a remote mouse and a remote keyboard if possible. These are not costly, but will make your work a lot easier. As far as safety, please, make sure that you are close to electrical support, that you're using surge protectors, that you've laid your cables down in a way that no one's going to trip, because now you're going to be working at home and you might have several, wires for your phones charging, your computers, your, copiers. It all depends on, how much equipment you have. And make sure that there's enough airspace around your setup. and keep it out of direct sunlight and away from heaters. Those are not, safe environments to be working under. And although noise is not an ergonomic consideration, I really do want to share with you that, yes, right now, people are, we're all adjusting to other sounds from the household once in a while, being heard while you are on a call or you're video conferencing. But to the degree which you can minimize this, it's going to be much more productive and much more professional, especially if you're dealing with the general public. You really want to minimize all of that, because to the general public, to outside clients, it should really sound seamless. It should not be any different from the office. But I know that, in this era, it's a little bit hard to manage all of this at the same time. A few communication tips. I think it's important to be accessible. So teleworking means you're home, but you are working, you are accessible, you are available. Sometimes it may take you 15 minutes to respond to something that is work related, or you are on a conference call, which should be on your electronic schedule. So it should be obvious that you are not available at the time. But it's really important that people feel comfortable communicating with you and that you make the time to respond to them. Because that's really the basis of all this, is communications. On your electronic calendar, please make sure that you, identify, what are the meetings that you're going to be attending, and also do put some notifications if there's 2 hours where you're not going to be available because of personal non-available time. Again, in this COVID-19 era, we all have to, do some of that. Usually in a normal telework, type of a situation, when, family, everything has not been thrown into one space at the same time. We do have very clear, I would say, identification for what are core hours that everybody's supposed to be available during which. But however, in this time, there might be some variances. FaceTime is very important. If you are, getting these apps that, and platforms that you can go on to Teams, or you can, join through Zoom, or even sometimes doing FaceTime with, whether you have an iPhone or an Android, really does help build up your relationships. I would say video conference with your manager. Again, this is not something you need to do every day. And video conferencing is not a tool for making sure employees are working. And we make sure that we tell managers this too. The reason behind communications is just to get information back and forth. It is not supposed to be a way to monitor someone's productivity. And then make sure that you're setting up agreeable times for check-ins with, others that you're communicating with. A few other considerations. Think through how you communicate today in the office, or you were communicating, and start thinking, okay, how do I replace those habits? Would I, just during lunch go sit in the lunchroom and get to exchange some, ideas with my colleagues, or was it that we just gather around the water cooler and have a conversation, and try to find some electronic replacements for those. So pause, if you want to communicate with someone, for a minute, pause and think through, okay, what should I use? What is the best way for me to get my message across and get a response in a timely manner? Please keep in mind, it's okay to call each other. We, in this era, I'm not talking COVID-19, but I'm talking a month ago even, we had gotten into this habit that we weren't calling each other. A lot of people stopped calling each other. on the phone, and sent emails back and forth. Even people sitting in 2 cubicles with, send an email instead of just get up and talk to each other, because they thought that would be more productive. In this environment, you may need to actually pick up the phone and talk to someone. For one thing, it breaks that isolation. And second, it also helps, develop some friendships and relationships that are a little bit more robust. So we all know there's going to be more emails, instant messages, texts, calls, video calls, and that's okay, because that will keep, us together as a team. One of the things you should talk to your managers about, given your household situation, is it okay to flex at the beginning of the day, start earlier and end earlier, and then have some parameters for core hours? Or is it possible to start later and end later? But all these discussions should be happening with your managers, so that they also have an understanding for your availability. And in some office settings, they may be very rigid and say, these are our core hours, this is when we expect you to be accessible and available. But hopefully, a lot of companies are putting on that understanding hat right now and giving some flexibility. Now, just a few words to leave you with. Please act on problems as they arise. Don't think it's going to go away. If you have a problem, try to troubleshoot. If it's a technology problem, again, try to troubleshoot. Or, it's a project-related issue. But be honest with your managers. If something comes up, you're not used to it, you don't know what you should be doing, give them a call, send them an email, get them involved, because the more we fix those initial issues, these first few weeks, the easier teleworking becomes over time if we manage the process. And for some of you, I know that you'll be going back to your offices and not wanting to, work at home ever again. And for some of you, this may open up a new path, so that maybe there will be an option to, work at home, maybe even a few days a week or 1 day a week in the future. Obviously, you will know how your employer is changing their mind regarding teleworking. So the better we come at this over time, I think the easier it will be to get that formal type of can I telework a day or 2 a week later when we go back to a normal situation. A few final words. Please don't get burned out. I love that picture. This does happen. Teleworkers, especially those of you who live alone, may overwork, and we don't want that to happen. You must balance work and life, and make sure that one doesn't interrupt the other. Again, problem solving is critical. Take the time to do it, and last of all, please try to stay calm and relax. Sometimes work is actually a comfortable area to be in these days.
Thanks, Elham. I think you did a really good job spotlighting that there are things we can all be doing right now to be more effective. And one thing that I got out of it is that, you really have to be proactive and plan for success. Now I want to remind everyone about the 2 resources on the screen. The first is the state's website, which has the latest COVID-19 information. And the second is our website, ctrides.com. And we have a lot of great information on our website for both employees who are really making this transition to teleworking, and for employers who are, on the other end of the spectrum, having to quickly develop or scale up their existing remote work programs. Again, there is no cost for companies in Connecticut or their employees to use any of our services. So please, email us, visit our website, give us a call if there's anything we can do to assist with that initiative.